my best to kind of make this kind of a hybrid course for people that didn't want to have to or couldn't come on these Monday evenings, plus 4 hour long. It's like really bad planning, but thank you for plugging away at it. So tonight we're finishing up the one chapter and moving on to the next one. And notice these two are really closely intertwined. Well, I should mention the test that's due tonight. I've gotten 7 people have sent the test in, maybe 8, I forget, sent in test 1 already. And I have 22 people in the class, I think. That's what the syllabus said, or not, the roster gives me. So hopefully I'll get the rest of them by tonight, or remember you can send them in later. That's okay. Did anybody want to go over that test that's here at all? We went over it pretty well, and it's easy. I mostly need 900 words, so that's pretty. And by the way, that might sound like, wow, that's just 900 words, but I'm convinced that language learning is what all of our education is really about, except for some hands-on, obviously, practical stuff. It's hard to think of car mechanics as just, a vocabulary event. You're actually trying to figure out a lot of interesting things, like, what kind of oil goes into this kind of car, etc. But what impressed me the most was the language learning that I had in the Defense Language Institute. I was absolutely convinced that my lifelong pursuit of learning, I have been always reading and always studying something, that the studying at the year I spent at the Defense Language Institute was the best. I learned the most in the shortest period of time. Intense it was, but nonetheless, I thought it was great. And it took, because I still can speak Russian, which is pretty weird, I suppose. Especially since I really don't get that much opportunity to practice otherwise. But the idea then is that language learning and that kind of a process is the best way to learn, in my mind. And the way you do that is by speaking, by reading, by listening, by writing, right? So volume is the answer, right? It's not so much what you say so much as that you say a lot. The more of it you say, it's like push-ups. You do 75 push-ups, it's better for you than 5 push-ups. You might not be ready for 75 push-ups, obviously, if you haven't done them for a long time. But you know what I mean. So my way of encouraging people to write and to converse and so on, I think is the main goal of really college in general. And then you have different vocabularies, as we've already discussed a little. But so test 1 is kind of a give me. I think of it that way, as long as you actually do send me stuff. Believe it or not, there are people that have a great deal of difficulty sitting down and writing 300 words. They don't even have to be coherent, guys. They don't even have to be spelled correctly. In fact, if you want, you could use another language too. It's fine. I'm fine with that. There's Google. Google will instantly translate practically anything for me. So that's kind of amazing. So test 1, send it in. But test 2 is going to be, of course, much more focused. And as I mentioned, that the 2 chapters really go together. The first chapter talks about categorical propositions. I talked about how Aristotle thought in categorical ways, and that's what gives us the kind of the basis for Western European thinking, that gives us true and false sentences. If you think about it, wow, that's pretty impressive. And it's still a quandary how other cultures with languages that are not based on the same kind of patterns can even have what we think of in Western European languages as true and false statements. It's kind of amazing. It is actually a real problem. But so we get into the categorical propositions and notice that he discovers that there's only 4 basic patterns, right? So we did those. How comfortable are you with those? I find that the easiest thing to do is use the traditional square of opposition there. Notice you could use, there's tons of materials on the web associated with all of this stuff. This is ancient. I think Aristotle's original website is still there. At least 2 people got that as a joke. You know. Sorry. I just watched an interesting video on how you can make good jokes that are always going to make friends instead of hurt people's feelings and stuff. Ellen was like the star for this whole video. It's kind of interesting. So we did this pretty well last week, and I don't want to go over it too much. But my first quiz question for tonight is, if you were given the A statement, or given that the A statement, all cowboy hats are smaller than Mexican sombreros, is true. I haven't actually empirically verified that that's the case, but just in my own experience, it seems to me like Mexican sombreros have always been much bigger, and I can understand why. They get a lot more sun, so that makes sense. Plus, I think cowboy hats are set up that way in order for you to be able to ride more easily through the brush. Is that right? Everybody cowboy? Yeah. Okay, so given that we have this statement, all cowboy hats are smaller than Mexican sombreros, is true, what would be the truth value of the 3 other statements on the traditional square of opposition? So the reason you're going to have 3 is because, of course, there's 4, and you have A statements, and that's an example of an A statement, right? Right. So we have every or all. Right? Obviously, you can use multiple ways of saying it. Cowboy hats are smaller than Mexican sombreros. So if I think about this statement over here, it's no cowboy hat is smaller than Mexican sombreros. This one is some cowboy hat is smaller than Mexican sombrero. And this one is some cowboy hat is not smaller than Mexican sombreros, right? So when you have the dependent statements that are related to statements on the square, these relationships occur, right? So if this one is true, this one is false. And by the way, if this one is true, then this one is false, right? They're contradictory, right? Pretty easy. Same thing here. If this is true, this is false. If this is true, this is false, right? Hence, they're contradictories. That's essentially what we mean, right? So if your mom used to yell at you, when she would say, go do such and such, and you say, but I already did. How you contradicted me, right? Didn't she ever say that? Well, we could, check and see, was she really giving you a contradictory? If she was saying this, then it wasn't a contradictory, it was a contrary. So that's different, right? A little bit more specific.
So if I'm to understand, if you're saying, so for the A, the quiz question, the A is every sparrow or every cowboy hat is bigger than sparrows.
Or
And then you
smaller
go-
than.
Or sorry, smaller than. Then you go to no, the E, and that's going to be no sombrero is smaller than. And then so if
No
that's
cowboy hat is smaller than a Mexican sombrero, right?
so if that's no for that, so if that's true for A, false for E.
Right. Exactly. So you're answering the quiz question, right?
Right.
So what are the other four? So one of the other four would be the E,
Mm-hmm.
and in that case, since that's true, this would be false,
Right.
right? Some would be true, and
And then
some
that-
are not would be false.
Okay.
So you could do this, see this relationship with any statement that's true or false, with the three other statements that are dependent for their truth value. That's why they're dependent, right? If I'm talking about cowboy hats, and then all of a sudden I go to like baseball caps, those are not dependent, they're not on the square, right?
Right.
Because you have to be talking about the exact same two, subject and predicate, and in that order, right? So I can't be talking sombreros, cowboy hats. That's not on the square, although you could use the converse of it, right, where you flip them,
Right. Right.
and then you realize, okay, now it's on the square.
And that'll change the whole thing.
It could. Remember, the converse is only going to be equivalent in the E statement and the I statement.
Okay.
So if it's the converse of an A statement, which I just gave you, that's not going to be equivalent.
Okay.
Trying to think what that would be, actually, it'd be interesting. So, all cowboy hats are smaller than Mexican sombreros. So if I use the converse, I had things that are smaller than Mexican sombreros are cowboy hats. That would not be equivalent, because there are a lot of things that are larger than sombreros than cowboy hats. So it would not be equivalent. So that's the quiz question. But yes, you could play with this with anything. Somebody give me a true statement or false, either way. True statement. It's raining out. It's not raining out. It's not raining out. That's true. What we're talking here, I don't know.
Don't scare me like that, so I'll play.
Well, it's not supposed to snow, or did I say snow?
Just now, just the.
I did? Okay, so it's not supposed to snow until you leave. So you'll be okay while you're here.
Yeah, that's the part I don't want.
But it's not raining right now. That's true.
Right.
And for us to know that it's true, what we're doing, we look at the situation, and we recognize the meaning of what I just said, referring to the weather that's present here, and we know what rain is, and it's not doing that, right? But if I'm looking at that statement, what we're comparing is this present situation with the meaning in that statement. Does it correspond precisely? And it does. How do we recognize that it does correspond? Well, we have a relationship being made in the statement. You know, that this place right now is having this kind of weather, right? So I'm giving that kind of a relationship. And so I'm looking at the subject as being this place, and the predicate is this kind of weather. It's not happening, right? So how would I compare that statement that it's not raining here to what kind of statement Aristotle would give us here? I'm thinking it would be an E statement, In fact, one of the things that most people do when they're working with this system is they'll refer to this and put not in front of the predicate. So they'll say, all of this area is not raining, right? Well, that's not how that actually works. And if you analyze the statement, you realize it's not really as unambiguous as if you put it in this way, where you say, no place right here and now is in the set of things that is raining, right? So that's what we really have to think in order to see that that statement is true. And immediately,